The rain fell in sheets that November evening, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected neon and despair. Inside his warm sedan, Michael gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white against the leather as he navigated through the downpour. In the back seat, his 5-year-old daughter Emma pressed her face against the window, watching the world blur past in streaks of color and shadow. "Daddy, why is she and her baby sleeping there?" Emma's small voice cut through the rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof. Michael's foot instinctively touched the brake. He followed his daughter's pointed finger to a bus stop shelter on the corner of 5th and Madison, where a young woman sat hunched over, cradling what appeared to be an infant wrapped in a threadbare blanket. Even from the street he could see her shivering, her thin jacket soaked through, offering no protection against the relentless storm. His first instinct was to keep driving. He had his own problems, his own struggles. Single parenthood wasn't easy, and every dollar mattered when you were raising a child alone. But Emma's question hung in the air like a challenge to his conscience. And when he glanced in the rearview mirror, his daughter's wide, innocent eyes were still fixed on the woman and child. "They're not sleeping, sweetheart," Michael said softly, pulling the car to the curb. "They're just waiting." Waiting for what? He didn't have an answer, or rather, he had too many answers. None of them comforting enough for a 5-year-old to hear. Waiting for help, waiting for luck, waiting for someone to care. Michael sat there for a long moment, engine idling, windshield wipers sweeping back and forth in a hypnotic rhythm. He thought about his own journey, the nights after his wife left when he'd sat alone in the dark, holding infant Emma, wondering how he'd make it through. He remembered the kindness of strangers, the neighbor who brought casseroles, the colleague who'd adjusted his work schedule without being asked, the daycare teacher who'd waived late fees when his shift ran over. "Stay here," he finally said, reaching for his umbrella. The cold hit him like a wall when he stepped out of the car. He jogged across the street, his shoes splashing through puddles, the umbrella nearly yanked from his hand by a gust of wind. As he approached the bus shelter, he could see the woman more clearly. She couldn't have been more than 25, with dark circles under her eyes and a defeated slump to her shoulders. The baby in her arms was perhaps 3 months old, and even from a distance, Michael could hear the infant's weak, hungry cries. "Excuse me," he said gently, trying not to startle her. "Are you all right?" The woman's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. She pulled the baby closer to her chest protectively. "We're fine," she said, but her voice cracked on the second word, betraying the lie. Michael held up his free hand in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not here to hurt you or judge you, my daughter and I." He gestured back toward the car where Emma's face was pressed against the window. "We just wanted to make sure you had somewhere to go. This storm is supposed to get worse." The woman's lips trembled. For a moment she said nothing, just stared at him as if trying to determine whether this was some kind of trap. Then, slowly, tears began to stream down her face, mixing with the rain. "I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered. The shelter was full. "They said to come back tomorrow, but tomorrow—" Her voice broke entirely. "My baby needs to eat. She needs to be warm. I don't know what to do." Michael's heart clenched. In that moment he saw himself, saw Emma, saw every person who'd ever been one paycheck, one crisis, one cruel twist of fate away from sitting in that very spot. He made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. "Come with me," he said. "Please, let me help you." The woman, whose name turned out to be Sarah, hesitated only briefly before accepting. Perhaps it was desperation, perhaps it was intuition, or perhaps it was simply the genuine kindness in Michael's eyes that convinced her to trust a stranger. Either way, within minutes, Sarah and her daughter Lily were in the warmth of Michael's car, wrapped in the emergency blankets he kept in the trunk. Emma stared at the baby with wonder. Her earlier question answered not with words, but with action. "She's so tiny," she breathed. That night, Michael's modest 2-bedroom apartment became a refuge. While Sarah, showered and changed into clothes Michael had quickly purchased from a 24-hour store, he warmed bottles of formula and prepared the guest room. Emma, rather than being confused or upset by the sudden visitors, seemed to understand on some fundamental level that something important was happening. Over the following days, Sarah's story emerged in fragments. She'd been a college student with a bright future, until an unexpected pregnancy coincided with her parents' decision to disown her. The baby's father had disappeared before Lily was born. Sarah had tried to work, tried to study, tried to keep everything together, but childcare costs and mounting debts had created an impossible situation. One missed rent payment had led to another, and eventually, eviction. She'd been on the streets for 2 weeks before that rainy night. Michael didn't judge. He listened, and he helped. He helped Sarah find a job at a local grocery store willing to work around her schedule. He helped her navigate the social services system, filling out applications for assistance, programs he'd learned about during his own difficult times. He helped her find affordable childcare through a church program. Most importantly, he gave her time to heal, time to plan, time to rebuild her confidence. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, a week, maybe 2, just until Sarah got on her feet. But weeks turned into months, and something unexpected happened. The apartment that had felt empty despite Emma's presence suddenly felt like a home. Sarah and Lily filled spaces Michael hadn't even realized were vacant. Laughter returned. So did hope. Emma blossomed with Lily around, taking her role as big sister with endearing seriousness. She'd share her toys, sing lullabies she remembered from her own babyhood, and insist on helping with feedings. The arrangement benefited everyone. Sarah provided childcare for Emma, after school while working morning shifts, and Michael adjusted his schedule to be home in the evenings, creating a patchwork family unit that somehow worked. But it wasn't always easy. There were moments of tension, of misunderstanding, of the natural friction that comes when strangers become intimates out of necessity rather than choice. Sarah sometimes struggled with accepting help, her pride warring with her gratitude. Michael sometimes felt overwhelmed by the responsibility he'd taken on, wondering if he was doing the right thing or simply complicating everyone's lives. The turning point came 6 months after that rainy night. Sarah had been accepted into a nursing program at the community college, with classes starting in the fall. She'd saved enough for a deposit on a small apartment across town. She had a path forward, a future she could actually envision. She was ready to move out, to reclaim her independence. "I can never repay you for what you've done," Sarah said one evening after the girls were asleep. "You saved our lives." Michael, literally, we would have frozen on the streets or worse. Michael shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad I could help. But I do owe you, and I want you to know that I'm going to pay it forward. Every chance I get for the rest of my life. I'm going to help someone else the way you helped me." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Sarah spoke again, her voice uncertain. "Michael, I've been thinking. Emma and Lily, they're so close now. And you and I, we make a pretty good team, don't we? What if this didn't have to end?" Michael looked up, meeting her eyes. He'd been thinking the same thing for weeks, but hadn't dared to voice it. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe we found each other for a reason. Maybe this wasn't just about survival. Maybe it was about building something new, something real. If you wanted to, if you felt the same way, maybe we could try to be a real family." The proposal was unconventional, born from unusual circumstances. But as Michael considered it, he realized that the most profound connections often are. They'd built trust in the trenches of hardship. They'd learned to communicate through crisis. They'd chosen each other, day after day, not out of obligation or romance, but out of genuine care and respect. "I'd like that," Michael said simply. "I'd like that very much." 2 years later, Michael stood in a small chapel, watching as Sarah walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, Lily toddling beside her as a flower girl while Emma served as maid of honor. The ceremony was modest, attended by the neighbors who'd supported them, the church members who'd provided childcare, the colleagues who'd become friends, and the social workers who'd helped navigate the system. But more than a wedding, it was a celebration of what happens when humanity chooses kindness over indifference. When a father teaches his daughter that seeing suffering demands action, not just sympathy, When a stranger becomes family because someone chose to stop, to care, to help. Emma, now 7, understood better now why that woman and her baby had been sleeping in the rain. She understood that sometimes people needed help, and sometimes her daddy was the person to give it. She understood that families could be built in unexpected ways, that love could grow from compassion, and that the simple act of opening your heart could change everything. As Michael kissed his bride, with both daughters cheering, he thought back to that rainy November evening. He thought about how close he'd come to driving past, to convincing himself that someone else would help, that it wasn't his responsibility. He thought about how one decision, one moment of choosing to see another person's humanity, had transformed all their lives. That night, tucked into bed, Emma asked her new mother about the shelter where she and Lily had spent those terrible weeks. Sarah, never one to shy away from difficult truths, explained gently about homelessness, about hard times, about the systems that sometimes failed people. "But you know what, Emma?" Sarah said, smoothing the hair from the little girl's forehead. "Your daddy taught me something important. He taught me that we can't fix everything, but we can fix something. We can help one person, and that person can help another, and another, until the world is just a little bit brighter." "Like a chain of kindness?" Emma asked. "Exactly like that." And so it was. Michael and Sarah started volunteering at the shelter, where Sarah had once been turned away. They donated what they could, when they could. They told their story to anyone who would listen, not for praise, but to inspire others to act when they saw suffering. The story that began with a child's simple question, "Daddy, why is she and her baby sleeping there?" became a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of action, and the beautiful, messy, miraculous ways that families can form when we choose to see each other's humanity above all else. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in rain-soaked blankets, crying in bus stop shelters, waiting for someone brave enough to stop and care.